wait a minute, how did I get here? Like, why am I so sick? If I'm taking all these meds, I should feel great. I don't.
Right.
What is wrong? Next thing I know, in a couple years, I'm on 18 medications at the same time. I see people with 6 weeks of antidepressant use. They were athletes. There was nothing wrong with them. Just the drug is enough, you know what I mean? But I think
Yeah.
patients are not given options. They see commercials. Every other commercial is about a drug that's going to fix you and a
Yeah.
smiling person dancing through a field of flowers, you know?
Yeah. And how did you get through that painful period?
Nobody ever said benzo withdrawal is a thing. I never heard that, not once. I just think we underestimate the power of these medications and we don't even understand what the heck they do.
So here we are. Welcome back, everyone. Today we have a very special guest for you. This is Angela Peacock, and Angela is an expert in deprescribing and medication, withdrawal protocols, and helping patients with coming off of medications. And before I present her, I want to read off to you some of her bio. So Angela Peacock is an MSW, and she served in the U.S. Army for 7 years as a communications specialist with one deployment to Iraq. After a series of traumas, she was prescribed over 40 medications for the treatment of her disorders. She eventually discontinued all medications and let go of her identity as a patient and regained most of her health and rebuilt an amazing life. Angie's story of withdrawal and recovery appears in the new film Medicating Normal. And actually, that's a really good film. And I would like for you guys to look it up on Amazon Prime. That's where I found it. Great film to watch. After the film was released, she led the outreach effort, engaging over 180 audiences during community screenings and/or panel discussions all over the world. Angie now serves as a psychiatric drug withdrawal consultant and healing coach. She provides education and support to individuals, families, and organizations interested in harm reduction and the healing from and deprescribing of psychiatric drugs. Some of her past roles in the community include board member with the World Benzodiazepine Awareness Day, a veteran liaison with the Benzo Information Coalition, and team member at the Intercompass Initiative and Outreach for Medicating Normal, the film. So welcome, Angie, and thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, me too. So my audience is used to seeing videos about medications, and they often have a lot of questions about medications, and even when it comes to the harm side of medications and side effects. And I wanted to bring you on so you can explain your story about how medications actually can cause harm. So if you don't mind just kind of sharing briefly, what happened to you with your medications.
Well, that's such a good question. It's very tricky, so I'll make sure I bring that in. But basically what happened was I went through a bunch of trauma in the military, sexual assault, sexual harassment, and then combat. And then I got a little bit of I would say, probably another injury from an antibiotic. I was given doxycycline for anti-malarial, and I think it just completely blew my gut bacteria. And then I started getting mental health symptoms and other symptoms. That is what started the whole thing, but it was very compounded with trauma. So I won't say it was like one thing or another. It was a couple things that were happening at the same time. And then I was given a benzo. Okay, you have severe anxiety, you have post-traumatic stress disorder. Let's get you some medication to control that anxiety. The gut side was pretty much ignored, honestly. And next thing I know, in a couple years, I'm on 18 medications at the same time. And at that point, I just said this to the person I talked to before you. I said, at that point, when you're on that many medications, you don't even know what's going on. Like I could not self-regulate. I'm full of symptoms. I'm in and out of the hospital. I'm telling people I don't feel good. But the modern medical system doesn't look at it like, wait, maybe it's all the meds you're on. It's like, no, here's another med, or let's increase this, or let's change that. It was never like, maybe some deprescribing could help you. Maybe some harm reduction could help. So I just spun on that wheel for 13 years, deep down knowing something is wrong. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not satisfied with the answer that I'm getting. So I did meet a psychiatrist who said, like, who put you on all this? This is way too much. Let's get you off some of it. And as I deprescribed down lower and lower off of those 18, I started getting myself back. I started feeling better. I started being able to address some of those issues, both trauma related and gut related. and just lifestyle. And then the last drug I came off of, benzos, for anti-anxiety, that one almost killed me because of the way that they
Wow.
took me off wrong, way too fast. And then it was a cold turkey situation in a hospital. And then I spent the next 3 years like in severe withdrawal, severe, like I didn't even know existed. But I did eventually get my life back. It's taken me many years. I'm now 8 years off all meds. I'm not necessarily a proponent of get off all your meds. I don't think that's right for everyone. I don't think everyone should do that. Maybe some people choose that. I didn't really have a choice in the matter. It just kind of happened to me. It was not a goal, but here I am 8 years later. I got my life back. I've got most of my health back. I'm still working on things, but that's kind of what happened.
Wow, that's very interesting, all the different medications. So you said there were 18 total? Oh
At
my
one time, but
gosh,
over
at
that
one
span of
time.
13 years, it was 40 different ones. It was every
Wow.
antidepressant you can think of, every antipsychotic, it was always a combination, like, let's try this, try that. And I just got tired. Like, I'm trying all
Yeah,
the things you guys are telling me to do, and I'm not better. I'm worse than I've ever been.
absolutely. So was it meeting that psychiatrist that you realized that it was the medications, or were you suspecting it was the medications before you met that psychiatrist?
I didn't even know. I really did not know it was the meds. I don't think I knew fully until I was off of everything and looked back.
Wow.
I
So
did not
some people
know.
could be suffering, they're on a bunch of medications, and it could actually be the medicines that's hurting them and not their quote unquote disorders.
Well, and that's what I meant
Mhm.
about that. That's such a good question you asked, because for me it was so subtle and almost imperceptible. But over the years, if I look back, it was like I was getting worse and worse. And there was a period of time where I looked back and said, "Wait a minute, how did I get here? Like, why am I so sick? If I'm taking all these meds, I should feel great. I don't.
Right.
What is wrong?" But it's like if you're on that many meds, it takes away your ability to even think about that, I think. Some of us. So,
Yeah.
but the symptoms are also tricky. What is actually my anxiety, and what could be anxiety coming from the cocktail that I'm on? Believe it or not, some of these drugs can cause rebound anxiety. And for me, I thought, especially the benzos, which is lorazepam, alprazolam, diazepam, or clonazepam for people in the audience with a generic.
Yeah.
I thought I need these meds because I am so anxious. But what I was doing was a feedback loop. I'm anxious because of the meds, and then I take more meds that makes me more anxious, and there's a rebound, and it just I didn't know. Wait, it's the meds that are causing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
And so
tricky.
when you started coming off of those medications, the benzo was the last one
Yes.
to come off of? Wow.
Yep.
And then you said that was when everything kind of broke loose, because that's one of the most difficult. I see that in my own practice as well. When someone's coming off of benzodiazepines, it can be very tricky, and then, a lot of symptoms all of a sudden seem they come from nowhere.
Yes.
Um, with the benzos, and that's where a lot of that rebound effect comes in. And
Mhm.
so you were experiencing this for 3 years, very severe
Severe.
symptoms. How did you get through? Like, what was the process of healing, and how did you get through that painful period?
First, it was because I have a bachelor's in psychology and I have a master's in social work, and the master's came later. But at that point in time, I had been to all these doctors, been to AA meetings, been to NA retreats, therapy appointments. I have an undergrad degree in this subject, and nobody ever said benzo withdrawal is a thing. I never heard that, not once. Did not know that. The only thing I knew was watch for addiction. And I knew what addiction looked like. If I run out of pills early, or I'm going and buying them on the street, or I'm craving them, that means I'm addicted. So I
Mhm.
felt safe. Like, I'm taking them as prescribed. I'm not running out. I don't feel euphoria. I thought I was safe. Okay. So what happened is, as soon as that cold turkey happened in the hospital, um, and I got all these physical symptoms, I'm like, I knew I was normal, and then I wasn't. Very clear. Okay. So then I started doing research. So the beginning part of my healing process was, what happened to me? Oh my God, what is going on? So I was reading everything I get my hands on. I'm in the medical journals looking at benzos from the back end of my school library, trying to figure out like what is going on. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm in benzo withdrawal. That's what this is. And so I tried to talk to my doctor about that, and he didn't really get it. And so then it was, no, you have agitated depression, or no, you have what is it, functional neurological disorder.
Wow.
So they were trying to misdiagnose me with these things, and I'm like, no, 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 I was normal. I was a statistics tutor with a 4.0 GPA, and a month later I can't get out of bed and I can't shower standing up. Like,
Wow.
this is very clear to me what happened,
Yeah.
So I had to stand really confident in what I thought was happening to me and really educate myself on that topic and try to get through it. So this is going to sound controversial, but for me, my healing process was I have to protect my nervous system and don't let them give me more meds, because I know this looks like mental illness. And I know if I told them what I was experiencing, for instance, like suicidal thoughts, like intrusive thoughts, severe anxiety, I'm scared of everything, I have depression, I have OCD type health anxiety, that looks like mental illness, and they are going to put me back on meds. And I was like, if I go back on meds, I don't think I'm going to make it. Like I just felt like my nervous system was so sensitive and in hyper overdrive. I was so fragile. I was like, I cannot mess with this. Leave it alone, So
Right.
my healing process, because I felt I'm a more of a severe case, I will say that. I just knew my fragility. So I stayed away from everything. I tried to do diet things like paleo, primal, on the keto spectrum, like low carb, just eat whole food. And I would
Yes.
try to sit in the sun to get some sunlight every once in a while when I could. I would put my feet on the ground. Anything that soothed the nervous system, that helped me a little bit, but it was very gentle and very purposeful. I could not introduce supplements. I have a lot of people, you and I have talked about this before. Some people can take a bunch of supplements and they're totally fine. They're addressing deficiencies. There's others of us, I was way too sensitive. If I tried anything, it would make my symptoms worse.
Yeah.
So it took me a period of time for that to calm down, and then I could take supplementation later. But it was
Right.
diet, it was sunshine, it was low stress environment, it was anything soothing and calm. That's what really helped me.
Wow. And so then after that 3-year period, there was like an interim period, and I
Mhm,
know you talk with your clients about the waves and the windows.
mhm.
So is that when you started experiencing like the symptoms coming and then having windows of feeling good and then like going through that?
We refer to waves as like the bad parts, and windows is like you feel almost normal. But some of us, the windows are just like 20% less bad. Like it's not like
Mm,
this huge, like bright open sky. So I think at that point, when like the acute period starts to calm down, and for some people that can last a week, for some people it's 6 months, it's all different. We all have different healing processes. I want you to know that. And if they, in general, if people deprescribe slowly before they have a bunch of bad effects, they can almost sometimes they can avoid that completely. And it's
yeah,
just, I get off slowly. My doctor's responsible. People like you that they work with, they can come off responsibly and slowly and avoid some of the more severe symptoms. That's the point of tapering, right? So
absolutely.
so you don't have to experience what I did, is what I'm trying to say. But then there's the period after that acute period, after that most severe part, it's like people have to inch their way back into life. And it
Mm,
it does feel like, at least for me, it was like I have to teach my brain the world is safe, that supplements are safe, that food is safe, that like I'm not in danger. I don't understand what benzos do. We don't even understand it, but it literally feels like PTSD times 1,000.
right.
Your brain is just lit up and on fire because of all that suppression that happened over the years. And now the lid is off, and all those chemicals are totally messed up. And so it took time for that to regulate.
Absolutely. And speaking of the whole regulation process itself, your body's trying to heal itself. And
Yes.
sometimes, like what I find is that patients have some underlying factors that can be contributing to them not healing well. And you
Mhm.
mentioned your gut. Obviously, the doxycycline was a big factor,
Yep.
wiped out your good and bad bacteria
Yep.
in the gut. So you had, to rebuild that unknowingly,
Yep.
and kind of start from zero there. But were
Yep.
there any other underlying factors that when you look back, you can say, "Wow, that was probably contributing to some of these symptoms"?
I just saw this on Instagram actually. Some functional medicine doctor put something about we got to address all these the gut and this and this and this and the emotional life. And I put a little comment there and I said we can't expect people to be able to do this when they're getting pounded with a cocktail of drugs.
Hmm.
Like to me it's backwards. So I think 13 years with more than 40 medications, just that alone can screw a person up for a long time.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So until I got, and I'm not a proponent of everybody should get off their meds or anything. I'm never saying that. But for me, I had to get off of everything to see what the heck was going on and what was what.
What
You
was the
can't,
baseline?
what is it? I don't even
Yeah.
know. And that's what I
Yeah.
wondered all those years, is like, what is me? What's real anxiety? What's coming from the meds? I don't know. I don't know. And none of my doctors knew. and everything on my blood test was looking normal. All my stuff said everything was fine, but I didn't feel good, you know?
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's true. I can't really go back and pinpoint. I mean, what do you mean? Like, give me an example. Like,
Like,
what else
for
could it?
instance, like mercury toxicity or
I mean,
low
I got.
vitamin D or tick bites and things like that can create
Yeah.
Lyme disease and or mold and
I mean,
intoxication.
I checked for all that. I got my amalgam removed. My mercury levels went down. I
Mhm.
was treated for a tick-borne illness in 2014, but that was
Oh, wow.
fixed back then.
Hmm. So
I
that was
mean,
before everything had happened,
before.
before
Me-
the
Yeah,
medication injury.
yeah. I just think we underestimate the power of these medications, and we don't even understand what the heck they do. And I can tell you through my experiences doing all these screenings and working with all these people. I mean, this is my full-time job, just like
Yeah.
you. And but I'm coming from it from a coaching standpoint, not the medical side. But I see people with 6 weeks of antidepressant use. They were athletes. There was nothing wrong with them. Just the drug is enough. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's sticky, but it really is about taking back control of your life and your health and figuring it out for yourself and not giving your body over to a medical system to fix you.
Hmm.
Like at the bottom line, that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, and what about you're an MSW. I know you're not practicing per se as like a therapist, but
Yeah.
what is your take on therapy? Because a lot of times when I see clients, they want medication first, and I
Mm-hmm.
explain to them, well, therapy could actually be should be your first option and your first
Yes.
choice to try before jumping to medication right away,
Yeah.
because I believe that there is in this in our society this idea of a magic bullet fix.
Exactly.
And when we talk about therapy, now we're talking about work. We have to look inside of ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, did you do any therapy or anything like that to help?
I have done ton. Oh my gosh. The person before you, we were just talking about this very subject too. And I was like, first of all, while I was on the meds, I tried every therapy, EMDR, EFT. I did prolonged exposure. I did CPT twice. I did CBT, anger management, bio feedback, TM meditation. I did everything. And I'm telling you, I can't explain this, but I swear to you that it's almost like that constant need to try to fix something, plus the medications I was on, plus the side effects, plus maybe adverse effects that I'm having from the combination of medications, it felt like the trauma was present and I could not get it to go away and put it down and like put it away. So, in a way, looking back, I was working against myself and I was perpetuating that you're sick and you're broken and you need to go fix it. And now that I'm off and I have all these years behind me, I look back and I'm like, and you saw this in the film,
Mhm.
but it was like, wait a minute, I was just a scared little girl who was traumatized. There was nothing medically like broken about me.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm not underestimating people have distress. Perhaps I needed those meds for a long time. Okay. I'm not even saying that I didn't. I don't know. I
Mhm.
wasn't given a lot of options, but I think
Yeah.
patients are not given options. They see commercials. Every other commercial is about a drug that's going to fix you and a
Yeah.
smiling person dancing through a field of flowers, you know?
Yeah.
They're not said, it doesn't say in the commercial, like, try therapy first or try exercise or try talking to a priest or a spiritual leader or your friend or grieve your loss of your wife or husband. It's boom,
Yeah.
here's a pill. And I'm telling you, all those pills did for me was kick the can down the road. And eventually I had to deal with it. And then I had to deal with more problems because of that trauma caused by the medications and the medical system. And
Right.
believing myself to be sick for all those years.
Absolutely. And so you're coming out from, that all those traumatic experiences and service to our country, which I thank you so much for, what you are doing now and what you've done for our country. But that sounds like instead of giving you a pill, perhaps explaining to you, number one, you're in acute stress,
Yes.
phase, and that's normal.
Yes.
It's normal to be, upset and grieving and having
Yeah.
anxiety and
Not
talking through
sleeping.
that.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
right because of everything that you went through, it's expected. And
Yes.
then perhaps teaching you skills,
Yes.
to help manage your nervous system like that you had to learn on your own later on, but
Yes.
perhaps doing that first could have been, really helpful as
Yes.
far as preventing
Yes.
combination of all these medications that you ended up being on for so long.
I've talked about this a couple times in the past, but it's like, how can you possibly expect to have access to the emotions needed to process something that's happened to you? And it doesn't need to be war. It could be poverty. It could be racism. It could be domestic violence, whatever your situation is that happened to you that brought you to medications. I think the system uses the reasoning that, well, you need the medications to be able to do therapy. Okay, perhaps, but if the medication has a numbing effect or like causes things to settle down, does that still allow me access to the things I need to work on? I think the best use of therapy is, it could be a coach too, somebody that helps you listen to yourself and build resilience to deal with big emotion. That's the only purpose I can see. I know, looking back on my life, when that happened to me, I had this huge emotion and I had nobody to help me process it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to do with it. And it was like a steaming kettle, like I'm going to explode. I don't know how to feel, what is going on with me. If somebody could have helped me like navigate the inner world, that would have helped more than a med to dampen it.
Right. You're in a coaching practice now. So you're helping people who are struggling similar to the way you were struggling.
Yeah.
And so is this how you are helping people then with the resilience building and teaching them skills and kind of just being there to listen to what's going on, to their
Yeah.
symptoms?
Yeah. It's a lot. What I see is, here's the general pattern. It's people get on for a reason. Like I said, it could be, I can't sleep. I have a bad job. I have a bad marriage. There's a number of things. Okay. And these are average, let's say, life stresses. I'm not talking about people with like severe psychosis. Those are not the cohort that I work with. But like something happened in their life. It could be anything. Okay. Then they get put on meds. Then at a certain period of time, they either question, why am I still on this med? Or I'm getting effects that I don't want. It could be sexual dysfunction. It could be, I want to have a baby. I want to breastfeed, a number of things. People have a reason, I want to come off. Then they either go to their doctor and say, could you help me get off of this? And they are taken off too quickly and they experience bad effects, or the doctor has not a clue. And then they start Googling, how do I get off an antidepressant? How do I get off a benzo? How do I get off my sleeping medication? And somehow they'll find our groups, they'll find our film, they find us, and they realize, oh my God, my doctor has no clue how to help me get off. Yeah. So I'm more on the side of like, they figure their taper out. I'm not touching their taper. I don't tell people what to do with their meds. They've already come to that conclusion. They don't want to take it, And then on my side, it's like, let's look at your nutrition. Let's look on how you're coping. Like you're going to have bad effects. And guess what? There's not a whole lot of meds that are going to fix that. If you want off, you got to identify, why do you want off? And what are you going to do when these symptoms come? And what are you going to do when you get lower and you do have a panic attack or you can't sleep? How do we deal with that? Because I'm telling you, coming off the meds, for most people, it feels more severe than the reason they went on. And so they have to unlearn, there's not a pill to fix this. And it's kind of a spiritual thing. It's kind of, I don't know. It's like, we suffer a lot to do this. We suffer a lot, and we know there's not a whole lot of answers. Most of us have come to the conclusion, my doctor might hurt me more, because if I tell them what I'm experiencing, they're going to want to fix it. And then I'm going to find myself on 5 meds, or, we both know people that they go to detox facilities and maybe they come out and do okay. Maybe they come out and have severe withdrawal, or maybe they come out on more meds than they went in with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, there's not treatment centers for this. There's not outpatient resources for this. There's no ICD billing code for you to bill somebody that's an antidepressant withdrawal.
Right.
So now there's this whole industry. I hate to call it that, but there's coaches, there's other doctors that are working in this area outside of the system, and it has to be self-pay because the normal system does not recognize this as a real issue, but it is. Right. It's very real. It's very real.
It is. And I thank you for bringing that to all of our attention, that, though medications for some people can be helpful when there's the unique circumstances, right? But when we're talking about life stressors, when we're talking about grief, when we're talking about even trauma, a lot of those things can actually be helped with therapy, resilience building. Medication isn't always the answer. Right. And you mentioned antidepressants as well and other medications. So it wasn't just the benzo that caused the injury. I don't want to make the benzos as the bad guy, even though they're the worst, but it's all of them. Yeah. And you've seen in your practice that it's across the spectrum of all of these medications, and even antibiotics for some
Yes,
people.
antibiotics,
I have
even
seen that too.
anti-nausea drugs at the ER. People go in for a migraine, one injection, they can get a movement disorder. It's amazing. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
And so we have to be careful, with
Mhm.
what we're putting into our bodies.
Yes.
And like you said, with a lot of these medications, we may have a surface level understanding of how the medications work, but we really don't know all the ins and outs and even some of the chemicals that go into making these medications, and then what we get post-market.
Yeah.
And that's even more true when we're now looking at generics,
Mhm.
because they're allowed to mix in other
Yeah.
chemicals to make it compounded in a certain way, to make it more sellable, et cetera. And
Yeah.
so even when we change, and a lot of patients experience this when they're on a name brand medication and it goes generic, they
Exactly.
realize that generic doesn't actually work as well. That's
Yep.
because of all of the factors involved when you now switch to generic,
Yep.
and how the medications are being cut, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I really appreciate all the work that you do. Did you want to let our audience know if they're suffering through antidepressant withdrawal or any psychiatric medication or any medication illness or injury,
Mhm.
that how they could reach you, and what
Sure.
programs you offer?
Sure. My website is angiepeacock.com, ANGIEPEACOCK.com. But I have a free resources tab with a bunch of like the vetted resources. Survivingantidepressants.org is one, Inner Compass is one, Benzo Buddies is another. There's tons of free resources on there. If you want one-on-one support, you can book a session there. I do give a free 15-minute intro, like just to meet each other and see if we would make a good fit. But I have tapering support groups. You've been to some, and
Mm-hmm.
the acute withdrawal and protracted support group, support
Mm-hmm.
circle. Sorry, I don't like to call
Yeah.
it group because I'm like the farthest away from anything mental health related. It's like how are we going to get through this? But anyway, so I have a couple tapering circles that are very low cost group coaching format. You get to meet other people going through the process with you. You get to find healing buddies, that kind of thing. That's what I offer. And there might be some new stuff coming in 2024, but right now that's where we're at. And yeah, we're just there. Honestly, there's not a lot of help out there for this, but it's online peer support groups. It's coaches like me, and there's a few doctors like you that work with us. And you got to hang on for dear life. It's worth it if that's what you want to do. A lot of people, they get their health back, they get their lives back, they have a new sense of freedom and life that they never had before, just by way of the suffering that it takes. But it is worth it, and worth doing if that's your choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. And even like you said, maybe it's not all of your medications. Sometimes it's just getting down to like one, or two,
Exactly.
not,
Exactly.
10 or 12, like,
Right.
like you were on 18. I
Right.
mean, that's just, of course there's going
Crazy.
to be interactions. Of course there's going to be
Yes.
problems. So for
Yes.
some people, it's just getting down to one or two,
Yes.
could be their
Yes.
deprescribing, and not to even feel bad about that,
No.
because some people,
No.
they need a little, more support for various
Yeah.
reasons, may it be
Yeah.
genetic or,
Yeah.
underlying issues that are going on,
Mm-hmm.
physiologically speaking.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, I want to say, for, being here with us and expressing and sharing your story, because I think that a lot of people need to hear that there's this other side to
Mm-hmm.
medications.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what's out there is, it's glamorous, like you mentioned, the commercials, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera. But we need to understand, like, when we're talking about risk versus benefit, the risk is something like this happening. The
Yeah.
risk is a medication injury. And when you try to get off, the withdrawal process and how that can end up really hurting your neurological system and overall psyche,
Yeah.
while going through it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And the last thing I want to say is just, it's very tricky because when you're on meds, it's like, what is this anxiety? Is this a side effect? You don't know. It's very tricky. So I just want to say, if you have a feeling in your gut or like in your intuition, like, I just want to be healthier, or that's the stuff that I felt like the system kind of talked me out of over the years. Like, I would bring up a side effect and say, like, I'm having some sexual dysfunction, like, what's going on? And they would say, oh, that's your trauma. And now looking back, I'm like, wait, that was the antidepressant. That's what was doing that. So it's really tricky. So I urge anybody in the audience, like, just dig into it. Read the pamphlet that your drug comes with. Talk to your pharmacist. Ask your doctor about an exit plan. Listen to your intuition. Seek out functional medicine people, or integrative medicine people, alternatives, do all the things, that's what I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree as well. Do your homework and make sure that you understand all of the risk involved with taking a medication before taking it. I think that's most important for sure.
Thank you so
So
much.
you're welcome. I'll make sure to put all of your links down in the description for people so that way they can have the link to Angie's website and that resource page that she mentioned. So that way, if you're interested in finding out more about medication injury or medication withdrawal, you can go there and check it out and see if that's something that, if you're interested in the support, that could help you. So, as always, I thank you all for watching and listening. I wish you well on your mental health care journey, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care.